Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, sincere thanks for joining and apologies. So let me take this moment to thank everyone who have joined this insightful session on e-invoicing. Through this session, we aim to make you comfortable about e-invoicing compliance, which is soon to be applicable for 20 crore turnover companies also. I take immense pleasure in introducing to you all the speaker of today's session, Mr. Kedarnath. Mr. Kedarnath is a qualified chartered accountant. He stood 44th All India rank in CA final exam. Mr. Kedarnath has been an integral part of PKC family for over 6 years. He is the manager of Audit and Assurance Department at PKC. Ever since his association with PKC, Mr. Kedarnath has handled complex taxation cases and litigations. Mr. Kedarnath has worked across industries and successfully implemented BPR for numerous clients and helped them streamline their business processes. His clarity and in-depth knowledge in A to Z of finance and taxation makes him the go-to person for solving any issues faced by the clients. He has presented sessions in Excel, TDS, and various other areas of finance. Let me welcome Mr. Kedarnath to present on the topic Kickstarting e-invoicing and share his valuable insights on the same. Mr. Kedarnath will take over from here.
Hello. So thank you for the introduction, Shyam. So my name is Kedarnath. So we will be looking at e-invoicing and the provision of e-invoicing and the practically how are we going to do e-invoicing in this webinar. Let's start. So e-invoicing. So now e-invoicing is actually so in this session we'll be looking at all these things. So we'll be looking at why we are doing e-invoicing, what are the features of all the e-invoices, who should raise an e-invoice, what are the consequences of not raising an e-invoice, when should we raise e-invoice, and more importantly, when not should we raise e-invoice. Then we will look into the practical part of the session where we will raise e-invoice, we will take a invoice, we will raise an e-invoice on the portal and we will see how it looks. We will see about the QR code and how it needs to be affixed. All those parts we will be looking at. And we will also look at the most important aspect of how to cancel the e-invoice. More than just putting in a new invoice, cancellation of the e-invoice is also very important. So we will also look into how to cancel the e-invoice. So starting first of all, now why is the e-invoice, why the concept of e-invoice has come is that now what happens is we are raising invoice on our tally or in our accounting software, and in the month end and the next month before 10th we are reporting to the government, before 10th or 11th we are reporting to the government through GSTR 1. We report all the invoices that we have raised for the past month. Then what happens is sometimes we also do some corrections in GSTR 9, 9C, all those things. Now here what happens is there is a gap between the actual raising of the invoice and the reporting of the invoice to the government. So in this gap, they have noticed that there are a lot of people are taking advantage of this, which we will see how they are doing, which are misusing it. So what the government has brought in is they have brought in a concept of e-invoice, where whatever invoice you have raised on your accounting tally is authenticated in a portal of all the e-invoice portal. So whatever invoice is raised, the same information is actually uploaded into the portal and it is authenticated, so that to make sure to prove that whatever invoice you have raised is a valid invoice and it is genuine under GST. So then now what happens is the government gets real time information, because when you are, for any invoice that you are issuing to be valid, it should also have an e-invoice. So like that they have brought in the concept like an invoice you have raised without the e-invoice, if you are liable to raise e-invoice without the e-invoice, the invoice that you have raised itself is invalid, and so then they have put in heavy consequences for it. So now what happens is the government gets real time data on whatever is the invoices, what are all the turnover that is being done by the taxpayer. So this also helps. So this is just an electronic authentication mechanism under the GST. It's not like we need not to maintain any books of accounts. We have to maintain a books of accounts. Apart from that, we need to ensure that all the B2B invoices are authenticated in the GST portal. So it also is facilitating for us the real time reporting of all the invoices. And now through e-invoice we can automatically integrate and generate the e-way bill also. So e-way bill and e-invoice are actually integrated, highly integrated. In fact, the e-way bill or login ID password is the same as e-invoice credentials. So now why I said that there were some people who were taking kind of advantages. Now what they used to do is they used to not they used to make a sale, but they do not disclose in GSTR 1. They sell it and they don't disclose in GSTR 1. Now those kinds of issues will now get resolved, because you have to real time you have to report whatever sales you are making. Then sometimes after at the year end they will book some dummy sales, some sales like they will book to some customer supplier, and the customer they will book some sales to increase the turnover. This will also to help there in the valuation purposes. For loans, sometimes the bankers may ask for some higher turnover, so for that they will increase the turnover unnecessarily. Then sometimes what happens is the other party, whoever is the recipient of the supply, will claim the GST in excess. Even though it is the invoice is not raised, they will claim excess ITC. That is one. Then they will sometimes account excess expenses, so by way income tax will get reduced. So like that, there were a lot of places where the invoicing concept, the ITC concept has actually been misused. So to avoid that, they have brought in this concept of real-time accounting of all the real-time reporting of invoices to the government. So now, as we see, the e-invoices are all authenticated by the GST portal. It is not raised in the GST portal itself. It is authenticated by the GST portal. You'll also see that this is only applicable to B2B transactions. Now, B2B, where B2C transactions are currently applicable only for businesses with a turnover more than 500 crore there. So that limit also they may reduce in the future, and it may become applicable for us for B2C also. But for the time being, B2B transactions only are applicable. It does not matter whether we are supplying goods or service. For goods or service, for both of it, we need to generate e-invoice. Now, once every e-invoice is generated, a unique IRN, invoice reference number, will be generated. We will see all these IRN concept in this little in bit some time. We'll see all these things in some time. Now, what happens is now this e-invoice gets integrated with multiple portals. For example, from e-invoice, it will get integrated to GSTR 1. Now from coming from the next month, when you raise an e-invoice in the portal, what will happen? Automatically your GSTR 1 will get auto-populated with all those e-invoices. Now if you go and do any changes to it, for example, you have reported sale through e-invoice, you have reported sale of 1 crore. Now if you go and change it to 1 crore to 198 lakh something, now that difference is getting noted by the government, and they will raise a notice later on, saying that these kinds of mismatches are all there. So that is one type of linking that they have brought in. Second thing is that portal is also linked with your e-way bill. So now you need not raise e-way bill separately and e-invoice separately. After writing e-invoice, you can raise the e-way bill automatically from there. Now, who should raise e-invoice? Now, going forward for you, up to now, all the businesses with the turnover more than 50 crores are raising e-invoice. Now, from next month onwards, that is day after tomorrow onwards, if your turnover is more than 20 crores, then itself you need to raise the e-invoice. Now, if what is included in that annual turnover is if you do inter-branch transfers. For example, there is a branch in Tamil Nadu and there is another registration, another branch in Andhra Pradesh. Now, if you make a sale from Tamil Nadu to Andhra Pradesh, that will also get added to your turnover. Now, we will also see how we can get to know this from the GST portal in some time. But just understand that the fourth phase, we are in the fourth phase, in that 20 crores is the limit. If your turnover is more than 20 crores, then we need to start raising e-invoice from the coming month onwards. So now 20 crores, it can be for any financial year. 2017-18, that is when the government, the GST concept itself came, till the current financial year. It can be any financial year. It does not, so if suppose last year we have made 22 crores, but current year because of COVID we have come down to 18 crores, still it is applicable, because they don't talk about the immediately preceding financial year, they talk about any financial year. So any financial year it is applicable, you have to raise a e-invoice. Now, the most important thing is what to do what is the consequence of not raising an e-invoice. Now, if you don't raise an e-invoice, then it means that the invoice itself is invalid. Whatever tax invoice that you are currently generating from your ERP tally, that invoice will also be invalid if there is no e-invoice associated with it. Now, so then what happens is, now all the penalties for invalid invoices will get attracted. So for example, first thing is penalty for non-issuance of e-invoice is 100% of the tax on the invoice, or 10,000, whichever is higher. Now, whichever is higher, it means that the minimum penalty is 10,000 rupees. You cannot have, so the minimum penalty that will be levied will be 10,000 rupees. It can go up to the tax amount that is due on that invoice. Whatever is the tax amount due, it can go maximum up to that number. But the minimum you need to pay is 10,000. That is for the non-issuance of e-invoice. Now, if you incorrectly issue a invoice, for example, the GSTR number is wrong, like that, some mistakes you have made, then it will come to 25,000 rupees. Then the recipient, whoever is receiving it, cannot avail ITC because the invoice itself is invalid. So the person who is receiving will not be able to avail the ITC. Now this is only from the e-invoice perspective, but if there is any movements of good, then the e-way bill is there. Now e-way bill or linking, e-way bill also will be deemed as invalid because there is no valid invoice against it, a valid invoice or valid delivery challan. So like that, there might be other consequences also that will be there here. So when to raise an e-invoice? So this is very important. Now for all your B2B supplies, the simple rule is all GSTR1, whatever is reflecting in GSTR1, for that you need to raise a e-invoice, except for B2C supplies. B2C supplies alone it is not required, and purely exempted supplies and B2C supplies it is not required. Apart from that, every other item that is reflecting in GSTR1, that is supplied to registered person, tax invoice, then supplied to LCG, exports, it does not matter whether it is with or without payment of tax, everything has to, an e-invoice has to be raised. For unregistered supplier, currently there is no need to raise e-invoice, and for exempted supplies, for example hospital services or supply of books, those kinds of things that are actually exempted under GST, those we need not raise e-invoice, because for those we need to raise a bill of supply. There is no concept of tax invoice for that itself. So there is no need to raise the e-invoice for exempted supplies and B2C supplies. Apart from that, anything that reflects in the GSTR1, everything that reflects in GSTR1, for that we need to raise a e-invoice, that is tax invoice, credit note and debit notes. Okay, so we need to raise for tax invoice, credit note and debit note. When we mean debit note, it does not mean purchase return. It does not mean purchase return. For example, let's say you have raised an invoice. You have one item you have sold. You have invoiced it at 10 rupees. Now we are only going to make a change in the rate. Only in the rate we are going to change. 10 to 11 rupees we are going to change. Now one option is you go and do an amendment. Another option is you can go and raise a debit note. When you raise a debit, now this debit note will increase your turnover. That will be reported in GSTR1. For that, an e-invoice has to be raised. You need not raise any e-invoice for purchase returns, because purchase return is not related to the GSTR1. It is only related to your GSTR3B. Credit note is the sales. So it is a sales. Now, if supplier, now for increase of liability or increase of input tax credit, if you are raising a credit note, or then you need not consider that in your e-invoice. Whatever is a sale return, that only you need to raise an e-invoice. Now there are some businesses which need not raise any e-invoice. For example, if you are one of these businesses, then you need not raise any e-invoice for anything. Even if your turnover is more than 20 crores, you are not required to raise. Insurance companies, banking companies, NBFCs, goods or passenger transporter agencies, then multiplex theatres, SEZs and free trade zones. So now we will go into the practical part of the session, where we will understand about the e-invoice portal and all those things. So now to go into e-invoice portal, now to access it, we need to go into, we can type in e-invoice 1 portal. So you can go and access here. Now there will also see there will be another one website called a trial like this. Don't go to this. This is a trial website where whatever you are raising it won't go and reflect there. That is a trial website only. So you need to always go into this part. That is the e-invoicing. So there won't be any trial. E-invoice 1 at 1.gst.gov.in. So this is how it looks now. So now first thing that you need to do, you need to first, before you raise an e-invoice, first thing that you need to do is you need to ensure that you are enabled for e-invoice. Now what does that mean? We will see. So you go to this e-invoice portal, search. Under search there will be one option called e-invoice status of taxpayer. You click on this and then it will ask you for a GSTR number. Now I will just give you one, I will just update a GSTR number here and give the captcha. So now it tells us that you are enabled for e-invoicing from 1st of April 2021. Now what happens is it takes, I showed you about the aggregate turnover more than 20 crores. Now what happens is it is calculated, the aggregate turnover is calculated by the GST portal itself, and if for this GSTI number aggregate turnover is more than 20 crores, then it will say that you are enabled for e-invoicing. Now if yours is less than 20 crores till this period, anytime less than 20 crore, then it will say that it won't be, it will say that you are not required to comply with GST, you are not required to comply with e-invoicing provision, like that it will come here. But anyhow, we will always suggest you to again go with your auditor and check it once whether it is applicable or not, because there might be some problem in the portal. Overall it is right, but if suppose there is any issue in the portal and then I mean any filing of the return was done incorrectly, because of that it might come wrong actually sometimes here. So it's always safer for you to check again with the auditor once. But overall from here you will be able to get to know whether you have to register for the e-invoice or not, invoice portal or not. So you are enabled. Now suppose you are not actually, so for example let's say that GSTI number, it is coming in that part, it says that you are not required to raise a e-invoice, but actually you are liable to raise an e-invoice, but as per the portal it is coming here, it is coming that you are not required to raise e-invoice, but actually you are liable to raise e-invoice. Then you go to registration. In the home page, go to registration, e-invoice enablement. Now what happens is first you need to enable e-invoicing. You need to enable e-invoicing and then only you have to create the login. So first you need to enable e-invoicing. So for that you need to go in the registration part, e-invoice enablement. Click on it, give the GSTN number, captcha, go. Then it will ask you for OTP and all those things, and then it will enable for you. I don't have any GSTN number with that kind of an example, so I will not be showing that here now. But it's very fairly simple. There is no need to do anything new. Only go, it will get enabled after you give the OTP and all. Now the main thing is, if you are not liable to raise e-invoice, okay, and in the portal also, the portal has come that you are not liable to raise e-invoice. Please make sure that before you give invoice enablement, you are actually liable to raise e-invoice, because once you enable e-invoice, you have to raise e-invoice even if you are if you are liable or not. Once e-invoice is enabled for your GSTN number, you mandatorily have to raise a e-invoice, irrespective of whether actually your turnover is more than 20 crore or less than 20, more than 20 crore or not. For example, your turnover is only 5 crore, but you have enabled it here, then you have to, going forward, you have to raise e-invoice. We cannot say that by mistake we have enabled and the money. So be careful and take care that you have to create it. Now once your e-invoice is enabled, now you need to log into the portal. Now there if you already have a e-waybill e-invoice, e-waybill credentials, if you already have a e-waybill portal, you have a username and a password, already you have it, then there is no need for you to go and create a portal login, because whatever is your e-waybill portal credentials, the same will be your e-invoice portal credentials. There won't be any difference now. So what you can do, after you enable the e-invoice, if you don't have a e-waybill credentials, then you go to portal login and login. If you already have a e-waybill credential, then there is no need for you to create it again. You can just directly go to login and type in the username and password of the e-waybill order credentials. E-invoice and e-waybill, the password and username are the same. There is no difference. It will be the same. So here in my case also the taxpayer is already registered with e-waybill, so I am directly going into login part. But for you, if you don't have a e-waybill credentials, you can just go here, give the GSTR number, captcha, then you can it will just ask for a OTP, then it will create the credentials actually. So I'll log in now. So this is how your e-invoice portal looks actually. So now from here we are going to learn how now. So you can see here at the right hand side, in the center you can see is the dashboard. Now in the dashboard it says that yesterday how many we have generated, to this month how many have we generated, cancellation also you can see. All those things, whatever we have raised, whatever we have cancelled, you can see everything. Now if you go into this one part of e-invoice, when you click on it, you can see that it opens down. Now here if you see, there is one option of bulk upload, cancel, print, bulk IR and cancel. Now upload, we will see about the first option. Now the first option is where we use to create a e-invoice actually, where we create an e-invoice. So now we will go into how to create an e-invoice, a new e-invoice. So for that, first thing that you require is that you require a e-invoice the tool you require. You need the Excel file. So this is how the Excel file will look like actually. So this is how the Excel file. Now you need to upload. If you see here, now all the invoice details you need to upload in a JSON kind of a format. Now in JSON format, if you want to upload, then you cannot directly upload an Excel file or Tally and the PDF you cannot upload. You need to upload it in a particular JSON format that is less than 2 MB. So how do you get it is, you can see here in under help here, you will be able to see tools in the home page, that is einvoice1.gst.gov.in. help, you can see tools. In that tool there will be one option of bulk generation tools. So you can click on that. In that, if you see, you can see here in this part where you talk about JSON preparation tool version 1.01. So last updated 26th of November. There will be part A, part B, part C, part D. Now part A is the simplest format, and that is the format that is always recommended, because part B it is little complicated where you will give product details differently like that and all. Part C and D are only for majorly for big export kind of related things. So we will be looking at format A actually. Format A. When you click on the format A, the Excel is getting generated, it will get downloaded. And this is the Excel format. This is how the Excel will look like. If you go inside, it will be here. Now, before you start raising an e-invoice from this Excel, first thing you need to ensure is your macros are enabled. So they have done a lot of background, they have done a lot of coding in this Excel file. So when you're going to start, now you need to ensure that the macros are enabled. Now how do you ensure the macros are enabled on your system is, you go to File, Options, I'll just check in my news this one. File, you go to Options, this Excel option sheet will show. Go to Trust Center settings. There will be an option of macro settings. There generally it will be like disable all macros. This is what the option would be, disable all macros. Now you need to change it to enable all macros. Only then it will work properly, otherwise it won't work. It won't do any validation, it won't do any changes. So you need to go to files, options, trust center settings, again trust center settings, macro settings, enable all macros. Once you do this, all the macros will get enabled and you can start raising e-invoice for it. So this is how it will look like. So we will just go through the e-invoicing portal. How do we fill? We will also take some sample data and also fill and see how to do it, how to do the validation and how to upload all those things. So first is a profile. Now profile is a sheet, that is now profile sheet is the first sheet actually. Now profile sheet is a sheet that is meant for it is to simplify all our work actually. You will understand that in some time, but we'll just fill it actually. So we will fill in the seller GSTR number. Now the legal name, make sure that if you make sure that it is as per the profile, as per the GST profile, as per that you make sure that it is matching with that, and also the address also. So the location will be Chennai state, Tamil Nadu, the pin code. Okay, now once you do that, then below if you see there is something called the profile details. Now default everything will be yes. So default everything will be yes, and if you go to the next sheet, e-invoice sheet, there will be so many columns actually. There will be around 30, 30, 40, 60 columns, 70, 85 columns are there. So 80 to 100 columns will be there by default. Now what this profile part will do is it will remove unnecessary columns and give you only the columns that are required. So you will see that how it is. So if you see the first part, the first column is the supply type code, then you have reverse charge related details actually. So do you have reverse charges? Now that is the first question that is asked here is, do you have reverse charges? Now if you give it as yes, what is the meaning of yes is, now when you are your outward supplies are liable to reverse charge, that is the meaning. That means you are not liable to pay tax. The opposite party who is receiving the service or supply will be liable to pay tax. Now if it is no, then what happens is automatically the columns get hidden actually. If you see the two columns that were there about the reverse charge part gets hidden. So after A it is directly C, the B is fully hidden. So that is a benefit of this. So there will be a lot of unnecessary columns will get removed once you update all these things properly. Now next thing is, do you have e-commerce GSTIN? So this is only for the e-commerce operator. Now in case of any e-commerce operators are there, then you are selling anything through e-commerce operators now, then you need to give it to yes, and when you give it yes, then it will ask for the e-commerce GSTIN number also. These are mainly for the RCM, all those kinds of things actually. Then the next part is, do you have bill from and dispatch from transaction details? Now this will be majorly from when there is any kind of a job worker. So you have sent the material to job worker. When you are making a sale, the material does not go from your location, but it goes from a different location, a job worker location. Those kinds of now that kind of a transaction is only will show as yes or no here. So if you set it to yes, then you will have here the dispatch details will be there, it will come here. So default so the dispatch details, these columns will be there, no? These columns will get hidden now when you give it to no. When you are going to dispatch from your location only, then the dispatch detail columns will get hidden like this. The next thing is bill to ship to details. For example, the GSTIN of that supplier is actually registered in one place as a principal place of business in one area, but you are sending the goods to a warehouse of that person, you are sending it to some other location, then it will be like bill to ship to. Bill will go to the head office, that is where that principal place of business is there. Now the ship to will go to the warehouse, where the location is actually, where the godown is there. Now that will influence the shipping details. So these are the shipping details. Now if you give it to no, then the shipping details will get hidden actually. Then do you have supply of service? Now if you don't have any now mainly supply of service is for validation of the HSN codes, e-way bill relation, linking with the e-way bill, those kinds of things only the supply of service is there. So if you have not, do you have supply of service, you can give it to no. Then there will be only one option called is service that will get hidden actually. So there will be an option of is service, that is this column, that will get hidden, and the HSN code validation also will not happen. That only service now it will be, and the 99 will start the HSN code. That's why that will not work. Barcode details, if you want to give any kind of barcode details, generally we don't suggest this one because there will be so many barcodes which are being sold, so that this we don't do. Free quantity in items, so this one is for when you are making any sale at zero rate. Now the implication will be they'll then go and check whether your ITC is reversed, because if you're giving anything for free then ITC will have to get reversed. So that is the implication here. So we don't generally suggest to use this one. Batch detail, so this is also like barcode details only. If any kind of a manufacturing company you have a lot of batches, then if you want to give that, you can give. In case of any exports, you have to give the port code, all those things actually. So for example, you need to give the shipping duty, shipping bill number, the date, the port code, whether you are claiming a refund or not, what is the currency, all those kinds of details you need to give. Because even for export also, we saw that even for export also we need to raise a e-invoice. So for that only is there. So for now, we'll just show it as no. Now, do you have e-way bill details? Now, there are two options. One is you might have already raised an e-way bill and you are sending it now. That is option number one. Or so if you have already raised an e-way bill and now you are raising e-invoice, then you can give e-way bill details in the last part actually here. But if you don't have an e-way bill also, nothing wrong, because it's not a mandatory field. You can just keep it as no. You can raise a e-invoice. From the e-invoice portal, you can raise a e-way bill automatically. So this is the basics on the profile actually. So now we will just see how to fill in the main sheet here. So I will take an example of a invoice that we have. I'll take an example of an invoice with 2 line items so that it is easy. So this is for example an invoice. Generally this is how the tally learn it will come. I'll just show you how we can convert from tally to this format. Now first, supply code. Supply code will be B2B or SEC with payment of tax. SEC WP is supply to SEC with payment of tax. SEC without payment of tax. Exports, these are all, and this is a deemed export. So this generally we are now we are looking at B2B supply only. So this is a B2B supply. Now the next column is IGST on intrastate. Now there are cases where intrastate supplies we will pay IGST and not CGST and SGST. Now those cases you need to give it as yes, but generally you give it as no, because if you give it as yes, then the other party will have to pay RCM on it. So that's a recent notification that has come in the portal update also, that now they have made it like the other party has to pay RCM on it. So you keep it as no only. Document type. So we have seen it that tax invoice, credit note, debit note, all those. So it will be a tax invoice. So tax invoice. Document number is nothing but the invoice number. So if you see here, the invoice number is KSI. So KSI slash 510. So that is this one. Then the document date, we will put today's date. Now when you are doing this document date, now please be careful that it has to be in the same format. 30/03/2022. Otherwise the validation errors will come. That is why. The next thing is the GSTIN number. So we will take this GSTIN number of the buyer. Now then it will also ask the legal name. So we will take Worth Trust. Then we have the buyer POS. Now what happens is there is an automatic backend, there is a validations and all will happen. Now for example, that party is there in 33. That means we are supplying to Tamil Nadu. Now if the buyer place of supply is not Tamil Nadu, then we have to charge IGST. If it is because the supply is there, the person is located in Tamil Nadu and the place of supply is also in Tamil Nadu, then actually we are located in Tamil Nadu. So we are located in Tamil Nadu based on 33. Now if your place of supply, the supplier or the place of business is other than Tamil Nadu, then we need to pay IGST. So that validation and all in the backend it will happen. So we need to be careful in that. In the address part, we will take Chennai as a location. The pin code is not mandatory. Take 6,32,000. Buyer or state is also Tamil Nadu. Now, this is the most important part actually, where you give information about the product. Now, for example, in this invoice, we have sold 2 items, accessories and saree. 2 items are there. Now, we need to give the product information line by line. We need to give. So, 2 are there. So, we need to give 2 items. Now, in this invoice, there are 2. So, 1, 2. Serial number has to come as 1, 2. Because there are 2. If there are 3, then third one also has to come. Then product description is not mandatory. Wherever the star is not there, you can ignore those columns. It's not very mandatory. HSN code. Now, HSN code minimum you have to give 4. Now, as per the turnover, there are rules are there on how many HSN code you need to use. But minimum it will accept 4. If it is less than 4, then it will give a data validation error. Okay. Now, the first one is 9102 and then 5407. I'll also update product description and then saree. Then you need to talk about the quantity. Both are 1 quant unit. Unit of measure. Here again, this also has to be as per the master drop down that they have given. Now, if you use something else other than the master, if you override it manually, then it will give you an error. The JSON will not generate, it will give you an error. The unit price 4,800 and 3,000. Now, what is the gross amount? Gross amount is nothing but the quantity into unit price. Now, you cannot just like that multiply here because it will show like this. So, you need to calculate somewhere else and put it here. So, 4,800 and 3,000. That is the unit price. Then you have discount. Now, for example, you are giving, let's say, a trade cash discount or a trade discount. Then you can minus it. Generally, we don't show anywhere. We don't show discount when you are raising the invoice. We don't show it separately. But if you are giving, we can update it here. Now, you should not update a negative figure. Everywhere you should know where you should update a negative figure. You should only update a positive figure. Updating a negative figure is not right actually. You should only update a positive figure. Then taxable value. Taxable value is nothing but that is nothing but gross amount minus the discount. That will come as a taxable value. But here there is no discount, so it will be 4,800 and 3,000. Then you have the GST rate. Now GST rate. Now if you see in this example. 9102, the accessories is 18% and this is 5%. You can type 18 and 5. Okay. Now these are all not mandatory actually, these columns, but we will just update it once. So for example, CGST for this 18% is 432. SGST is also 432. You can see from here. Then 75. Okay. Then now even the other charges, these things, whether if it is applicable CGST test and all, you can just update it here. Now other charges is there. Now other charges also cannot be negative. You have to keep it as positive number only. It won't validate otherwise. It will have negative. You have to have as positive only. Now item total is nothing but the sum of these 3 numbers. That is the taxable value and the tax amount. So if you add all these 3, you will get a number, right? Now that number is what we need to update here. Come to I think around 5,664. Yeah. So now whatever you have updated till now is the product details. That means for each product what are the CGST tax amounts and all. Now after that you need to update the details of the entire invoice, because if you see these 2 invoices are part of the same these 2 line items are part of the same invoice. So now you need to update the details of the entire invoice actually. So so what is the taxable value of the entire invoice? It is nothing but you need to add these 2, 4,800 and 3,000. That is 7,800. Now for the entire invoice, what is the CGST or SGST value? We need to take that and update it here. 507. the same. So this is, it will repeat because both of these are for the same invoice. You need to repeat it again for both. You need to add these two numbers, taxable value and update in taxable value. You need to add the tax amount, these two tax amounts, and update in the tax amounts. Then here, if you see, you need to add the entire invoice value. That is, if you add everything, 7,800 plus 507 plus 507, you will get 8814. So everything you need to know. These information will be like a repetitive information. If it's the same invoice, then it will repeat again and again and again. Now, once you update everything here, now because multiple entries are there now, what you do, the first row, whatever is there, you just copy it and paste it below. Because the same information has to get duplicated, that's why. So you copy it and paste it below. Then you can click on the button validate. Once validated, if there are no errors, it will tell you the data is validated successfully. But there might be, sometimes you might have errors. That time what error is there, it will tell you clearly, it will tell you in the error list. So mostly when you are, the way the problems will be there is when you give the, so the buyer GSTR number has to be correct, because if this and our GSTR number are in different states, then you have to give IGST. You should not give CGST or SGST. So like that, there are a few checks are there that is built in. Now that needs to be all those things needs to be diagnosed and rectified. I will come back and tell you an easier method of doing all these things. Once you validate it, a button prepare JSON will get enabled. Now you can click on the button of prepare JSON. Then it will validate it, then it will place it in this part actually. Now where it will place is wherever the Excel file is located, same place it will update the JSON file also. So here is the JSON file. Now this JSON file can be uploaded onto the portal. Now this JSON file is ready. Now we need not do any kind of signature, signing and all. Nothing is required. No DSC and all is required. You have the JSON file. You can just take the JSON file and you can upload. So now how did we come into this screen is, we logged into the E-Invoice portal, E-Invoice, bulk upload. This is a bulk upload where you upload the JSON. You click on browse. Then you just select that path, the JSON file will be there, click on open. Now that file is uploaded here. So there are two entries, one invoice, two line items has been uploaded. Now you click on upload. Now it will tell you how many invoices are uploaded in the file, the total number of items in the file, all those things. So there are no errors, so there are no failed to uploads. Here also it will do a validation whether the GSTR number is valid or not. Like that, it will do a lot of validation and then finally it will come here. So it has been uploaded already uploaded successfully. Now how to see the e-invoices? You can just click on the download print PDF button. It will open now all those every e-invoice will get zipped into one file and you will get this in PDF format. So this is how our e-invoice will look like. So this is the QR code. This QR code is only the most important part actually. It contains the IRN and other informations of the supply. It's very important. So now this QR code has to be there on the invoice. But if you are going to separately raise it, then you cannot put it on the invoice now. So what you can do is, if you are going to raise it through Excel, through bulk upload, if you are going to raise, through JSON upload you are going to raise, then what we recommend is you have your main invoice, because in that you will have the logo and all those things will be there. Apart from that, you also have separately you have this e-invoice printed, and this also you can send. So this will be digitally signed by NIC. That means that this is valid part. So when you are actually going to raise through Excel the e-invoice, then you have your invoice, along with it you attach the e-invoice and then send it to the supplier, so that they know that it is valid. This is a mandatory requirement. Okay. Now we have learned how to raise an e-invoice through using the Excel utility. I will also teach you how to do it through Tally. So now through Excel utility we have learned how to do it. Now we will see. Now for example, we have raised an invoice yesterday or day before yesterday. Now we want to see that invoice. How to see it? Now if you want to see an invoice that is already generated, you go to MIS report here. In that you can see an option called generated e-invoices. click on it, and when you click from date, you can notice that it is enabled only from 28th March. You cannot click anything before it actually. You cannot select anything before. Now, the reason is e-invoice can only be raised. The e-invoice can only be raised actually when you can view the report of e-invoices raised only in the last 3 days. So if you want to see what something that is raised on 1st of March, you cannot see that because that does not allow you to do that. You can only see last 3 days, that is today, yesterday, day before yesterday, only these three. So whenever you are raising through Excel, we always suggest you that you download the e-invoice and save it in your desktop or on your server somewhere. No, you download it and you save it. If you are doing it in Tally, I'll tell you what to do then. But when you are doing it through Excel, always download and save it. Now, let's say I want to view whatever we have raised now. No, we want to see that. So you select 30th. So today we have raised. So from date 30th to date 30th, go. Now here we can actually see this invoice. So this is the invoice that we have raised now. So this is the IRN code. So it will match with this one, 1C like that. So 1C. This is the IRN code. Now what e-way bill against they have a tag, that also you can see. So now status means active. That means currently it is still active. That means it will reflect in your GSTR 1. That's the meaning. So for now we have also learned, now we have seen how to raise an e-invoice, how to view a e-invoice report portal, how to view the e-invoices in the portal. Now we will just see how to cancel. Now for example, if you have made any mistake in the e-invoice, then you cannot go and do amendment like in GSTR 1 you can do an amendment in the next month. There is no option to do amendment. You have to cancel and then only you have to go and raise a new invoice. Amount is wrong, then you have to cancel it and then raise a new invoice. You cannot amend it. So how to cancel the e-invoices? For that we require either the acknowledgement number or the IRN number. Any one of these two information is required. You cannot go as per date and then cancel. So you have to go as per the IRN number. So we have the IRN number. We'll just copy the IRN number. Click on this home button. In that you can see invoice, e-invoice. There is one option of cancel. So you can click on this cancel button. E-invoice cancel based on only two things, that is the acknowledgement number or IRN code. Now here we are going to do it based on IRN code. So click on IRN, enter the IRN and click on go. It will show you the invoice what you have raised. So this is what we have done, what the trust we have raised now. So this is the e-invoice that we want to cancel. So you can scroll down. They will ask you for the reason of cancellation. Either duplicate or data entry mistake. You can say, let's say for example, it's a data entry mistake. So remarks also can be given. Now remarks is actually it's mandatory. It won't accept without updating remark. So we'll update the same thing here and then click on submit. So now what has happened is it has cancelled it. That's it. It has this e-invoice. So you can see the cancelled sign here. So it has cancelled it. Now if I go to the MIS report, generated e-invoices, that invoice will not reflect actually. That invoice will not reflect, it has gone because only active will come here. So now to view that e-invoice, you can go to MIS report, cancelled e-invoices, and whatever is cancelled today, you can see actually we have cancelled two. Recently now we have updated this e-invoice and cancelled this e-invoice. So this you can see it is cancelled here. So now what we have actually gone through is a detailed procedure of how to do it manually through Excel. But you can see that this is a very tedious process actually. It is very difficult for us to do all these things in Excel. Doing it is very difficult, especially when there are so many transactions. So what many companies have done and even the government has done is they have automated all these things by syncing it into your bookkeeping software, that is Tally or SAP. So they do this integration through something called API. So through that what happens is when you pass an entry in Tally itself, automatically it will get created in the, it will automatically create an e-invoice. So next we'll just start off with how to create a e-invoice using Tally. So that will be a large part of the session. We'll learn how to create an e-invoice through Tally. Now, before we do any settings in Tally, we need to first do the settings in the portal actually. So, if you see in the portal, we need to log into the portal. There will be an option here called API registration. Now, first, before you can use the API, you need to register for the API. So, you need to click on the API registration. In that, there will be an option called user credentials. Here you need to go and click on create API user. Once you click on create API user, an OTP will go to your mail ID, will be your mobile number. Now already we have done the settings and all, so I am not doing it again. OTP will go to the registered mobile number. That OTP needs to be updated and you need to click on verify the OTP. Once it is verified, it will go to a it will go to a new screen where it will ask some details. So first thing it will ask you something called a type. Now type you need to select GSP only, a GST Suvidha provider. So that is a GSP. Then they will ask something called a registration company. Now if you are using Tally, you need to select Tally India Private Limited. You need to select Tally India Private Limited. Then they will ask you for a user ID. Now everything they have a user ID. Even Tally, even GST portal has user ID. Like that, they will ask you for a user ID. Now this is the user ID. Now API underscore will automatically get concatenated, will get added. But you need to. This is your user ID. So this user ID you need to type there, and they will ask you for a password also. Now that password also you need to keep in mind actually. So for example here tester123 is my user ID. Then the password is there, that also I would have given. So these two I would have given and click on create button, it will get added like this. So there is no complicated thing, only the OTP will come. Once you update the OTP, select type as GSP, GST Suvidha provider, registration company as Tally, then give a user ID and a password. Now user ID, now if somebody else has actually used the same user ID, it will say that create a new, so it has to be unique. It has to be unique for you. So that is very important here. So now this is the setting, this is the only setting that needs to be done on the portal. Now we will just go into Tally and see what setting we need to do in Tally. Now first thing we need to do, now this is only supported in Tally Prime, it is not supported in Tally ERP. So the first thing that you need to do is after opening the Tally data, you need to make sure that the company addresses are all properly updated. So first go to company. In that alter company will be there. Here make sure that the addresses are all properly updated, because from here only the address is picked up. So make sure the address is properly updated. That is the first thing that you need to do. You can go to Alt K, alter company. Only the admin person will be able to see this one. So the admin has to, the Tally admin only will be able to see all this. So make sure that the address is properly updated. That is number one. Next, you need to configure through F11. F11, in that enable GST is there, right? Now here you can give S and enter. Here these are all normal informations. Now here the GST number here has to be updated. It's mandatory to update it here. Then now this comes from E-Invoice. Then here there will be a new option here called E-Invoicing applicable. Now up to this everything is there in Tally, old Tally also, Tally ERP also, but Tally Prime they have added this one. So if you give E-Invoice applicable yes, then they'll ask you which date it is applicable from. So because if you pass a backdated entry, for example it is applicable from 1st of April, but you are on 5th April you are going to pass an entry in March, then it won't raise a E-Invoice for it, because applicability started only from 1st of April, that is it. Then place bill from place Chennai. So this also you can give wherever you are from. Now default period for invoice report, I'll tell you where this impacts from, but generally we give 3, because if you see in the portal here also, no, the MIS report generated invoices also, it is only allowing 3 days. So that is why to sync default it will come in Tally 3 days one. Now send e-way bill details with e-invoice. So that currently I kept it as no, because then it will also update the e-way bill details. So currently you are not looking at e-way bill, so I have kept it as no. Save. Now I will create a supplier. Now what I will do now, now the settings in Tally whatever is required, that is also everything is done. Now, I mean, the settings is from the configuration of e-invoice perspective, everything is done. Now we need to create a ledger. For example, I have created the ledger um, for example, worth in a trust, that what we raise through Excel. We have created a ledger. So this is the ledger. So I'll just tell you which are all the important parts which we need to fill. So the address is extremely important. The address has to be filled properly. The PIN code is also very important. Then the GSTR number. That's it. These are the only three things that are very important, which needs to be updated in the tally in the supplier ledger. Then we will see stock item. So stock item also needs to be created, because item wise we are doing the accessories. In this, we need to make sure that we update the HSN code. HSN code and the rate, these two are very important actually. These two are important. These two need to be updated mandatorily. Now other things are all, it's a description, all those things are only optional. But HSN and the rate, these two are important. So once you update this one, so now after you create, now we have actually this, we will try to update this invoice in tally now. So once you update all those things, now we are ready for passing an e-invoice entry. So now I will take worth in trust. These details are all not mandatory. You can, if you update these details, actually if you see, all these details actually correspond with the dispatch details here. Whatever you show here as a dispatch details, no, same dispatch details, dispatch address, pin code, same things only are captured here also. So if there is a bill from, then you can update all these things here. Then it will be the party details. What is a party? All these things and all, it will come from the master. When you are creating the ledger, the master itself will give the address. All those things will get automatically captured from there. So there is no issue there. Then we are having a sales ledger. Now here we are actually selling two items. One is accessories. Quantity is 1. The rate is 4,800. Then you have saree. The quantity is 1 and then 3,000. Then CGST you are charging, SGST you are charging. So the GST rates also get automatically computed. Then this will be there. It will show provide e-invoice details. Click S. Here this bill to place is mandatory. Ship to okay. What we will do is we will leave it actually. We will ignore it and we will try. But we need to update these details actually. Bill to place we need to update. But for now we will leave it actually. Okay. We will just ignore it and we will see what happens. Enter. It will now accept. It will ask you. Now it will give you this pop-up. Do you want to generate e-invoice? Yes. Now it will say here that mandatory information for e-invoice is not specified or invalid. It tells you that it is invalid or not specified, but it does not tell you what is invalid or what is not specified. So for that, how to find out is, you can go to this exchange, Alt Z, this option is in exchange, send for e-invoicing is there. No? This send for e-invoicing you can click. Now when you do that, you will see that last 3 days, so for example 28th March to 30th March you can see here, only this period you can see here. This period is automatically selected. The reason is because only this is what we gave in that F11, 3 days, default date for e-invoice report we gave 3 days, that is why it is there here 3 days. Now here you can just click on the button F5, e-invoice. Once you do that, it will be like GSTR 1 itself. Information required for e-invoice not provided. Click on it. What invoice we have raised only is showing here. Buyer bill to place is not specified. So it is saying that bill to place is not specified. So once you update the details here, so here it tells you what detail is missing. So you can update the details here and save. It will go and it will raise the e-invoice. I'll just go to the entry and update. For now, I'll just go to the entry itself and change it to see how it will work in the normal course. So bill to. So once you give e-invoice, first it does the backend validation. Now all the required details are all updated there. So now everything is updated. Now you need to update the username. Now, if you see here, the username you can see here, right? This is a username. Now, username should always be prefixed with API underscore. Okay. Then I will type in the password. Now the GSTI number is coming from your company creation screen and GST IN details, that screen. Okay. Now what has happened is document rejected. No, document has actually gotten rejected by the e-invoice system. Now the main reason would be that it will be a duplicate of invoice number, it might be actually. So now how to check why the document has gotten rejected is, again go to Alt Z and here, and then you come to e-invoice. Now here if you see, you can see the rejected by the system. IRN generated and is cancelled for this document number. Now the reason is actually the document number is the problem. So already if you see in the Excel also we uploaded 507 and uploaded it. Now because we are doing it again same, that is why it is telling that it has been rejected because of this reason. So what happens is Tally sends the data and the system, the GST system gives the feedback whether the invoice has been generated or not. Not generated, it will tell you why, and then that reason is also updated in Tally itself. So how to see that issue is the main point here. So you can go to exchange, send for e-invoicing, and that F5 you can press. This is one method of seeing it. I'll also show you another method. So now I'll just do that correction alone. Okay. So KSI 508 I will just update it. Then okay, so that actually entry has happened. That's why it's not actually now accepting it now again. So I'll just pass a new entry. So actually the user ID and password only one time you need to update. Now after, because once you update it in that login, you can raise any, you need not give again and again and again. What I was meaning is when you actually give yes, generate the invoice, it asks for a e-invoice user ID and password. First time it asked, second time it did not ask, because one time if you update it is sufficient actually. You need not update it again and again and again. Now it says that invoice has been generated updated successfully. So you'll go to the portal and see whether it is reflecting or not. So you can go to MIS, generated e-invoice today. So today, okay. You can see here, this is the IRN number. Now, if you see, now let me go and see the invoice. Let me take the printout of the invoice. We are going to print it in PDF, let's say, current. I will just look at a preview. I'm printing the invoice. Now, when you print the invoice, you can see at the top e-invoice is there and the QR code automatically comes and the IRN comes. So now when you are going to do in this method, there is no need to have a tax invoice and also an e-invoice separately. Both are the same, because the information that is required to be captured in e-invoice is again captured in the tax invoice. The QR code is captured here, the IRN code is captured, the acknowledgement date, acknowledgement number, everything is automatically captured. So there is no need to, when you are sending the bills, no, there is no need to have an invoice, separately send a invoice, not required. That one Tally printed invoice is sufficient. Now after that, now let's say that you want to see all the reports, what and all invoices you have raised, what and all e-invoices you have raised. You want to see that report. How can you see it? Exchange, send for e-invoicing, again e-invoice. You can change the period. Okay, you can change the period. In that IRN generated is there. No? This is what is there. Now if you can press shift enter, it will expand, and when it expands you can see the entire details, the IRN code. So whatever, this will match exactly with what is there in the system. System less E9392 like that is there. Exactly same thing is there here also. whatever you are raising in the tally, whatever is raised in the portal will again get captured back in tally and will get saved here. So if you see in the first part when we discussed, we said that you need to download the e-invoice and keep. If you are doing it through Excel, when you are filing it through Excel, you need to download the e-invoice and keep it immediately, because only 3 days of e-invoices you can view. You can see here, right? 3 days only you can view. But in tally that problem is not there, because in the tally data itself it gets stored, but it is always safer to print and keep it. So but there is you need not immediately do it also. It will be saved on the system layer, it will get saved actually, all the IRN details. Now to cancel, you can just select this and you can just click on this cancel IRN. But what we notice is it is not working properly now in tally. There seems to be some kind of an issue in tally. So cancellation of IRN has to be done manually. It is always preferred to do manually. So how do you cancel IRN? You can take the IRN from here. You can take the IRN from here actually. In the IRN editor, so I am copying from here. You can take the IRN, home, it has expired. Okay, so some issue is there actually in the network connectivity. So anyway, that can be cancelled manually. It is not possible. Tally and the cancellation is there, but it is not working properly. That's what we observe. So, but that can be cancelled manually. So the major takeaway is, if you do it in tally, it is much simpler. If you compare it to what we did in Excel and tally, it's much easier to do in tally. And so you just have to do the configurations right. That's it. Like I told you, right, the GSTR details has to be there of the buyer, of us, then the HSN detail, then the tax rate detail, all these things. Now when you do this, credit note also automatically it will raise the e-invoice actually. Even for credit note, it will raise the e-invoice. Okay. Now one more specific thing that we have also seen is, now when you are going to give any kind of a trade cash discount, after you make the sale you are going to give a cash discount, and the GST you are reversing it, then you are raising a credit note. Now when you are raising the credit note, you need to give for the discount ledger. So we will pass the entry. So when we are giving the credit note, we will pass discount allowed, account debit to party. Okay, and then we will also reverse our output tax actually. So GST account gets debited also, our output also gets reduced. Now when you do that, for discount allowed, you make sure that in the discount allowed ledger you give the correct HSN number, HSN code. Now the HSN code will be the code of the principal supply, whatever is the principal supply, and the supply order, that is whatever you have sold, for which item you are giving the GST, you are giving the discount, that item order HSN has to be updated in discount allowed. So I'll just recap quickly. So that is one specific point where many clients have just struggled in that point. So I'll just give you a quick recap. So in the ledger, the supplier ledger, you need to ensure that the address, PIN code, and the GSTN is updated correctly. That is the first thing. Then output CGST, output SGST, there is nothing else. Then for the inventory item, you need to ensure that the GST, you need to also ensure the unit of measure is also updated properly. Unit of measure is updated properly, and then the HSN code, the GST rate is given correctly. These two is there, that is sufficient actually. Then you can pass the entry through a normal sales entry mode, through this mode. Once you give enter finally, it will ask you whether e-invoice you want to raise. Yes, when you give, it will ask you for the first time during that session alone, it will ask you what is the username and password. Once you update it, it will raise the e-invoice. If there are any issues in that one, then you can go to exchange, send for e-invoicing and e-invoice. From here you can see everything. What all issues are there, it's already generated. Now you can see the generated, and you can see what is the IRN number, all those information you can see. And then so you can get that report immediately in tally. So the periods and all can be changed. There is no mandate that you need to have the same period only. You can change the period also. One more way of accessing that report is you go to display, then GST reports. In GST report also you can see e-invoice. That is the same report. What you are seeing initially, what you can see through exchange here, what you see, same report you can see here also. Now if there is some now if suppose automatic integration is not happening properly from Tally lens, then one thing that you can do is you can go to exchange, send for e-invoicing. Offline export is also there. So what you can do, whatever is reflecting here, these two are supposed to be cancelled, but it is not getting cancelled. So whatever entries are there pending for generation will be there, right? For generation, that can be exported into the JSON. From Tally itself, you can export it as a JSON, and that can be bulk uploaded. So if you are going to face any issues in for example, if you're going to face any issues, the data is not syncing properly, then what can happen is you can do the offline export, and the JSON will come. JSON can be uploaded into Tally, into the portal automatically. So overall, this is it about e-invoicing. So I hope you found this session useful. So I will just look at some of the queries that are there. So if you have any kind of queries, you can just update it in the chat box now, so that you can. I think if there are no questions, I think the sessions is actually completed. If you have QuickBooks, we have to check more. Actually, we have to check whether QuickBooks will support it or not. Because I can just check and get back to you on this. Most likely, it should be having. Yeah. No, this one is there. Now, within 24 hours, we need to cancel the e-invoice actually. Yeah. Within 24 hours, we need to cancel. No need to share digital SIM card. Now, after 24 hours, you cannot cancel it actually. It does not allow you to cancel that one. No need to share digital. Digitally signed copy means, you mean the of the tax invoice, do you mean, or the QR code, or the e-invoice that is generated from the portal? Whatever is generated from the portal, already it is signed by the government side. It is signed digitally. Okay. So how can we upload an invoice having multiple GSTR? So multiple tax rates, if you see in that Excel, if you see the example that we showed actually had multiple tax rate in the same item. I'll just show you once. So if you want to see in Tally, if you see in Tally, if you see accessories had a GST rate of 18% and saree had a tax rate of 5%. So it had multiple tax rates, but it will automatically take and correctly it will update there. Now in case of Excel, in the Excel file, if you see in the that is why if you see we had two line items we have created, and we gave the tax rate here actually, one 18 and another is 5. Now in the same line you cannot give two, you have to create two lines and you have to show it separately. One is 18, another is 5. Now another, just one more thing, if you have actually missed to cancel, I hope that is actually solving your question, Saravanan. Now one more thing, if 24 hours is already expired, after the, but you have not, you have forgotten to cancel the e-invoice, but 24 hours is already expired, then what you can do is you can go and update it, you can do the correction in the GSTR1. GSTR1 automatically it will raise and come. It will sync between the e-invoice portal and it will automatically come in GSTR1. In GSTR1 you can manually delete the entry, but the information will obviously they'll be tracked by the government that you have deleted it. So movement of goods, if it is not involved, then you can also do credit note also. Can we raise credit note? Credit note only is the same. Actually, it's the same procedure what we have done for e-invoice. Just if you are going to do in the Excel, then you need to just obviously change the document type. In Excel, the document type will be changed. I'll just show you that part. So Excel, the type of supply, the document type is the column number E. Here tax invoice will have to be changed to credit note, but don't show any negative figures. That's the most important thing. You should not show any negative figures there. Even though it is a credit note, you won't generally show a negative figure. That is one thing. Next thing, when it comes to tally, you just pass the entry through credit note voucher type, not the sale voucher type. I hope that is clear.
I hope all your doubts are clear. Anyone have any doubts? Yeah, friend Saravanan has asked the question.
Yeah, actually they will ask actually why there is any difference, because now they have actually started sending notices to clients asking why there is a difference between e-way bill and sale invoice. So going forward, it won't immediately, they won't do anything. They will wait for 1.5 years. Then they will ask you why there is a difference, and they'll ask you to give the explanation. Now, if there is an invoice which you have actually not raised, which are not raised in the portal, then as we have seen, that 10,000, 25,000 in case of incorrect invoice, penalty will be levied, or 10,000 or the tax amount whichever is higher, like that they will levy the penalty.
So we will end the session in case there is no more doubts. I hope all your doubts are clear. Thank you, Kedar. So Murali has. Yeah, we'll come back to you on that. Okay. So thank you, Kedar, for that excellent session. It was very insightful, and I hope everyone got a grip over e-invoicing and the basics of e-invoicing and how to go about it. So we are ending the session here. Thank you. Thank you, sir.